The air in the Zenith spire didn't just vibrate, it screamed. A blinding golden pulse radiated from the center of the hall, turning every face in the assembly into a mask of pure white light. Vaincrate's grip on his staff tightened until his knuckles went pale, his eyes wide as the Chronos core began to hum a frequency that resonated in the very marrow of my bones. This was the moment. The truth is a frequency even the powerful can't mute. I could feel the heat rolling off the crystalline structure, a rhythmic thrumming like a second heartbeat. It wasn't just energy. It was a revelation of power and speed that threatened to tear the very air apart. But 12 minutes ago, the room was cold, clinical, and suffocatingly certain of my demise. I stood at the center of the great hall, my boots clicking against the polished obsidian floor with a rhythmic precision. The Zenith spire reached toward the stars, a monument to the absolute authority of the High Archon. Crate sat atop his throne of light, looking down at me with a gaze that felt like a physical weight against my chest. To him, I was just a specialist who had stepped out of line, a minor glitch in his perfect machine. The assembly was packed, hundreds of elites watching the spectacle of a stage trial. They wanted a show, and Crate was more than happy to give them one. The proximity between us was charged with a magnetic tension, an electric shock of recognition that passed between us like a spark. Crate leaned forward, his eyes searching mine for any sign of fear. Specialist Alara Jax, his voice echoed, amplified by the spire's acoustics. The charges against you are numerous. Sabotage, sedition, the unauthorized access of restricted data archives. How do you plead? He didn't wait for an answer before listing the supposed evidence. It was a masterpiece of fabrication. Every file I had legally accessed was rebranded as theft. Every safety protocol I had updated was framed as a backdoor for subversion. The arrogance of the man was his greatest blind spot. He assumed I would fight him, that I would scramble to prove my innocence using the very system he controlled. He didn't realize that mastery of institutional rules is the most effective form of non-violent rebellion. I looked him directly in the eye, ignoring the guards hovering just inches away. I could feel the vibration of the Chronos core beneath the floorboards, waiting for the right key. The magnetic pull between us was undeniable. He was the mountain, and I was the storm. I have a statement, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through my veins. There is no room for statements, only a plea. Crate countered. His presence was overwhelming, a mix of ozone and cold ambition. He was so close to victory he could taste it. He wanted me to beg. He wanted me to break. Instead, I smiled. It was a sharp, predatory expression that made his own expression falter for a fraction of a second. Then I will give you what you want, Archon. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the forgotten protocol I had unearthed in the deepest levels of the station's logic center. It was a safety valve designed by the founders, a way to ensure that the core could never be used as a tool for deception. Crate had forgotten it, or perhaps he never thought anyone would be bold enough to trigger it. I accept, I said clearly. I accept all charges as stated. The hall went still. A single "I accept" became a death warrant for a tyrant. By accepting the charges of high treason regarding the core, I wasn't surrendering. I was invoking the auditor's mandate, an ancient, hard-coded rule that required the Chronos core to verify the crimes by displaying the memory logs of the accuser and the accused simultaneously. It was the ultimate transparency tool. "What are you doing?" Crate hissed, his composure finally fracturing as he saw the console light up. "I didn't break the law. I simply woke it up," I replied. I reached out and slammed my palm against the interface pillar. The contact sent a jolt of pure energy through my arm, a searing heat that made my vision blur as the station groaned. The core responded instantly, its golden light expanding to consume the room. The light was a physical force, a tidal wave of brilliant amber that swept through the Zenith spire. It didn't just illuminate the room, it rewrote it. Holographic streams of data began to spiral upward, moving with such velocity that they blurred into a solid wall of history. This was the Chronos core in its true form, not a battery, but a witness. Vaincrate lunged forward, his face twisted in a snarl of desperation. He reached for my throat, his fingers brushing the collar of my uniform, but the sheer kinetic energy of the core threw him back. The electricity of proximity between us was no longer a game of political chess. It was a raw, vibrating battle for survival. I stood my ground, my feet anchored to the vibrating floor, watching as the first projection solidified above the assembly. It was Crate, but not the high Archon they knew. The image was sharp, pulsing with a luminous intensity. It showed Crate in the lower vaults, his hands glowing with the same golden light as he bypassed the station's safety dampeners. We watched in real time as he rerouted power from the civilian sectors to fuel his private labs, a theft of energy that had caused the great surge. The assembly gasped, a collective intake of breath that sounded like a rushing wind. Arrogance often creates blind spots where minor details become catastrophic liabilities, and Crate's liability was his own memory. He tried to scream over the roar of the machine, but the frequency drowned him out. The core was relentless. It showed the forged signatures, the silenced whistleblowers, and the secret pacts made to ensure his rise. Every crime was rendered in high-definition brilliance, a kaleidoscope of corruption that shattered his authority instantly. Crate scrambled to his feet, his eyes darting toward the exits, but the guards, once his loyal hounds, stood frozen, their gazes fixed on the sky above them. The truth had stripped him of his rank before the first word of judgment was even spoken. I felt a surge of terrifying relief, a warmth that radiated from my chest as the weight of the trial finally lifted. The golden pulse slowed, the vibrant streams of data settling into a calm, steady glow that bathed the room in a sense of new beginnings. The core had finished its work. Crate collapsed to his knees, his once magnificent robes looking gaudy and hollow under the light of absolute transparency. He looked up at me, his eyes searching for a mercy I didn't owe him. I stepped down from the witness stand, the obsidian floor cool and solid beneath my boots. The High Council emerged from the side galleries, their expressions a mix of awe and ironclad resolve. They didn't need a vote. The evidence was carved into the very air of the spire. "You were right, Alara," the senior counselor said, her voice carrying a resonance that cut through the fading hum of the machine. The law wasn't broken. It was merely waiting for someone with the courage to call its name. The transition was swift, a blur of motion and purpose. Crate was led away, his staff of office left lying on the floor like a discarded toy. The atmosphere in the Zenith Spire had shifted from one of oppression to one of electric potential. I felt the magnetic pull of the future, a horizon defined by speed and clarity rather than secrets. As I stood on the balcony overlooking the shimmering city below, the Council's decree still echoed in my ears. I wasn't just a specialist anymore. I was the one chosen to lead the station into a new era. The victory felt like a sudden rush of oxygen after a lifetime of holding my breath. I looked at the Kronos core, now humming a soft, protective melody, and knew that the spire would never be cold again. "Would you like me to generate an image of Alara standing before the shimmering Kronos core as the truth is revealed?"